Imagine a world where the Roman Empire never collapsed. No sacking of Rome by Alaric, no Western emperors fading into irrelevance, no fragmentation of once great cities into fortified feudal strongholds. Instead, picture a single, cohesive civilization stretching from the misty coasts of Britannia to the sun-baked deserts of Arabia, unchallenged in its cultural influence and political control. A world in which the familiar sound of Latin still echoes through Senate halls, aqueducts never crumbled, and cities never fell into ruin. How might such a world have developed? Would technology have accelerated? Would democracy and empire coexist peacefully? Would you, watching this today, be living in a vastly different society, or even on a different planet? Today, we peer through the fog of what might have been and explore an alternate timeline, a world where Rome never fell. Instead, it transforms, reforms, and survives, continuing to shape the world long after its historic expiration date. To build this alternate history, we need a specific moment to diverge from our own timeline. One plausible turning point is the crisis of the 3rd century, a time of civil wars, economic collapse, and near total fragmentation. In our reality, the empire was barely saved through reforms like those of Emperor Diocletian, but even his solutions fractured Rome into eastern and western halves. Now imagine a scenario where those reforms were more adaptive, more unifying, where an early model of federalism took root, empowering local regions under a resilient, responsive central authority. Barbarians, rather than breaching Rome's borders, are absorbed into the system, offered land, titles, and integration into the Roman military and bureaucracy. Christianity grows not as a revolutionary force that replaces Roman identity, but as a pillar incorporated into it, reforming the spiritual life of the empire without tearing down its foundations. Rome doesn't fall in 476 AD. Instead, it transforms, reforms. With the empire stable and unbroken, Europe doesn't disintegrate into hundreds of squabbling kingdoms and isolated manors. There is no feudal system, no power vacuum to be filled by warlords, popes, or petty kings. Instead, the imperial bureaucracy endures, smoothing over regional differences with law, administration, and infrastructure. Latin, evolving naturally over centuries, becomes not just the mother of Romance languages, but the dominant language across continents, much like English is today. The concept of nation-states never fully emerges. Instead, semi-autonomous provinces operate within a Roman framework. The idea of Rome as an identity, civic, legal, and cultural, binds diverse peoples together. Expansion continues, but it's less about conquest and more about influence. Trade networks extend deep into Africa and Asia. The Silk Road becomes the imperial road, protected by legions and patrolled for safety. Globalism, in this Rome-centric world, begins 1,000 years earlier than in our own. One of the most striking consequences of Rome's survival is technological acceleration. In our timeline, the collapse of centralized authority led to centuries of lost knowledge, books forgotten, engineering neglected, literacy rates plummeting. But in this world, the empire sustains not just political control, but intellectual continuity. Roman aqueducts, originally marvels of hydraulic engineering, evolve into the basis for citywide plumbing and sanitation by the 700s. Mechanized looms and water mills inspire early steam engines. Roads are maintained and improved, enabling faster travel and communication. With no centuries-long gap in education, discoveries stack on top of one another. Glass-making leads to optics, engineering leads to mechanical clocks and later to primitive automation. A printing press might arrive as early as the 9th century. The Industrial Revolution happens not in the 18th century, but perhaps in the 12th. By 1500 AD, this Rome could be experimenting with flight, electricity, or even early computing devices. Space exploration might begin not in the 20th century, but the 18th. Religion in this world follows a markedly different path. Without the fall of Rome and the subsequent rise of the Catholic Church as a feudal power, Christianity evolves within a pluralistic imperial system. The Church doesn't dominate political life, it coexists with imperial authority and even with remnants of older Roman beliefs. Imagine grand temples where Christian saints are venerated alongside deified emperors and philosophical sages. Festivals fuse together elements of Saturnalia, Easter, and civic holidays. There is no singular religious authority, no great schism, no crusades as we know them. Instead, councils and forums debate theology alongside politics, maintaining Rome's legacy of philosophical discourse. Education remains rooted in the trivium and quadrivium, but accessible to all citizens, not just clergy. Art, unimpeded by iconoclasm or ecclesiastical censorship, flourishes. The Renaissance doesn't need a rediscovery of classical wisdom, it never forgot it. The works of Aristotle, Cicero, and Galen are footnotes to new discoveries, not sacred texts to be unearthed. Daily life in the modern Roman world is both familiar and alien. Cities like Londinium, Lutetia, and Massilia are not ruins or quaint towns, but thriving metropolises layered with centuries of continuous development. Imagine skyscrapers with colonnades, marble-paved high-speed roads, and domed civic centers where senators still gather to legislate. The imperial postal system, now digital, runs on protocols derived from Roman tabularii. Clothing blends tradition and technology, tunic-inspired fashion with built-in climate control. Education is compulsory, every citizen learns law, rhetoric, and engineering basics. Latin, evolved through the centuries but still recognizable, is spoken in boardrooms and marketplaces alike. The state provides healthcare and infrastructure with imperial efficiency, funded by centuries-old tax systems optimized by now digitized bureaucrats. Even democracy, adapted to Roman values, exists in the form of powerful citizen assemblies and regional senates. It's a world of engineered beauty, where art, science, and governance are part of a shared civic identity. But this seemingly utopian vision has shadows. An empire that never fell might also be an empire that never relinquished control. What happens to dissent in a system that values order above all? Would freedom of expression flourish, or be quietly suffocated under a velvet-gloved fist? Slavery, which Rome historically relied upon, may persist longer under the logic of tradition and stability. Cultural assimilation, while unifying, might erase entire identities in favor of a homogenized Roman ideal. Colonization, though more trade-driven, may still involve exploitation. The empire's size could become a curse, creating bureaucracy so vast that innovation stagnates under the weight of its own procedures. Without external rivals, the hunger for progress may fade, replaced by a culture of preservation and managed decline. Power could concentrate into the hands of an unaccountable elite, senators, technocrats, patricians, who use stability as a shield against reform. So, if Rome never fell, would we live in a golden age or a golden cage? It's easy to romanticize marble cities and enlightened emperors, but empires, even great ones, are built on control. And yet, there's a lingering fascination. What if one civilization had been able to hold together the pieces of the world long enough to change everything? Clean cities, universal literacy, roads to the stars. It's a powerful vision, rooted in the real potential of a people who once brought aqueducts to deserts and libraries to frontiers. But every triumph casts a shadow. What do you think? Would an eternal Rome elevate humanity, or contain it? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through time's back door, don't forget to subscribe for more alternate histories, speculative futures, and AI-generated visions of what might have been.